Everybody, this is Dream. As we're getting back into Major League Baseball with the All-Star Week being over, we get back into a massive 14-game slate for Friday that starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. There is going to be some weather concerns on the slate, but we'll have to get back closer to those. Make sure to check out Kevin Roth on Twitter to get the most up-to-date information about weather for baseball. I will be going through the slate here. Lots of games, so let's go ahead and get into this one. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? And then we'll get into our pitchers. So we're going to start with our top tier pitchers, and Shohei Ohtani is the top overall option here for the Angels. He faces Houston, which is a tough matchup, but he does get a lot of strikeouts, and he has some. And while he does have some bad games, he's very capable of great games, and as much as anybody on the slate, and he's got the best uh, upside from the strikeout potential as well. We'll also look at Tyler Glasnow for Tampa Bay. He's got a very nice matchup here against Kansas City. And while he's only had one really bad game all season, most of his games have been in the middle average. Though his price is a bit high for the upside, he has a good matchup and he definitely draws some good potential here. Then we'll look at Luis Castillo for Seattle. He's a good option today. He hasn't been great versus good teams, but he's had a high floor, and he's been really good against bad teams, and this is a great option here, and he's actually pretty fairly priced as well, especially against a team that he should be able to dominate pretty easily. Then we'll look at Carlos Rodon for the Yankees. Now, he is facing Colorado, which is a contrarian risk. But he has played only in one game so far, and he was pretty limited on his pitching from that perspective. So I expect he'll have a little bit more of opportunity here to go a little bit deeper. But this game is in Colorado, so that is a risk, but he is capable of a good game here. I do also like JP France for Houston. He is facing the Angels and the Ace, and he has a good floor. He 20 fantasy point game is probably unlikely, but getting a 15 to 20 point range is definitely viable here. The Angels also have a lot of guys injured, so that does give him some upside as well. And with Ohtani in the lineup, it is going to be tough, but he definitely has some more upside as a result of the situation. Then we'll look at Charlie Morton for Atlanta. Now, he faces the White Sox today, which is a good matchup, and he's got really good upside here. He's had 720 fantasy point games in the last 13 games, and he has a pretty good floor as well, and this is a great matchup for him, and he's a pretty decent price. Then we'll look at Corbin Burns for the Milwaukee Brewers against Cincinnati. Now, this game being in Cincinnati is a disadvantage, but he does have two good games versus Cincinnati this season. He had 13 strikeouts between those two games. That said, he has a low floor, and it does feel risky, and Cincinnati's been hitting the ball really well. I have three Hail Mary plays as well, and Brian Balo, Kenta Maeda, and then Dean Creamer, as they all have some upside but have high risk and high reward. We'll go ahead and get into our catchers here. We're going to start with Sean Murphy for Atlanta. Now, he has absolutely great upside here. He's averaging over 13 fantasy points a game over the last 10. He's also hitting a lot of home runs, which he has 5 in the last 8 games. I think he draws great utility here and has just as much upside as anybody on the slate. And he's actually not that expensive at this position, despite the fact he is hitting the ball about as good as anyone in baseball. Then we'll look at William Contreras for Milwaukee. He's averaged about 10 fantasy points per game this season. The metrics aren't as good as Wilson's today, but he does have a good home run upside, and he has hit the ball very well. We could also like Wilson Contreras today, as he has 3 20 fantasy point games in the last 5. He's hitting the ball really well right this minute, too, which gives him some nice upside here, and he's the same price as William. Then you can also consider Jose Trevino, Adley Rutschman, and Tom Murphy at this position. Maybe in the first base, we'll start with Matt Olson for Atlanta. Now, he's very expensive here, but he's hitting the ball very well lately, and his price is high, though he does have good potential here, as he's got a great matchup, and he has big-time upside with home run potential. We'll also look at Luke Raley, who is very close to being a core play today for Tampa Bay. He feels very underpriced considering how good he's been playing lately, averaging over 10 fantasy points a game for the last 10, and he's had 3 home runs in that stretch. He draws incredible metrics for this game as well. Brandon Belt is a good value play, very cheap here. He can hit home runs occasionally, and the matchup leaves a lot of upside for a game that has some good potential for that. Though he doesn't have the best batting average lately, he does manage to score some fantasy points most of the time, and he has hit the ball pretty well as of late. We'll also look at Josh Naylor. For Cleveland against Texas is not the most ideal situation, but he's hitting the ball well lately, scoring over 10 fantasy points in 7 of the last 10 games, and he does have nice upside here. You could also consider Anthony Rizzo, Paul Goldschmidt, Vlad Jr., Justin Turner, Owen Miller, and Wilmer Flores, and I think Flores is a kind of a sneaky play today as well, especially if you go with the San Francisco stack. Moving into the second baseman, we'll start with Torres for the Yankees, who is a core play for me today, as he draws some of the best metrics on the slate for all players. Obviously, this game is in Colorado, and he's got a great matchup. I like his potential and home run upside. Mookie Betts is more expensive, but he is extremely hard to ignore today, considering the fact that he has absolutely torched the ball lately. He has lots of great games. And he has very nice upside regardless of the matchups. He's averaging over almost 18 fantasy points a game over the last 10 with a 457 batting average, which is absolutely ridiculous. Brandon Lowe is also in play here at this position. He has hit the ball pretty well recently, but he has been really up and down throughout the season. You do want to make sure he draws the start today if he's going to be in your lineup, and he has been scoring some fantasy points lately. But again, his batting average this season is awful. He's kind of a boomer bust play, but he has got some utility on the slate. Then we'll look at Julian for Minnesota. He is an underpriced play here. He's cheap. He's got a great situation, and he's 4 games in the past 5 over 10 fantasy points. That said, he doesn't play every day, so you have to make sure he does play, but he is hitting a 318 average over the last 10 games, and he's scoring some good fantasy points. You can also consider DJ LeMahieu, Nico Horner, Chris Morel, Ozzy Albies, and Andre Jimenez at this position. Moving to third base, we'll start with Rafael Devers, who's hitting the ball really well recently. He's really starting to hit the ball much better. He's also got nice home run upside, and the metrics are definitely off the charts today. He's also fairly priced here and a pretty good opportunity at this position. Josh Donaldson is also in play for the Yankees, as obviously he does be facing Colorado today. The batting average has been awful this season, but he does draw home run potential, and he's a high risk, high reward option on the slate. Then you could also consider Jose Ramirez, DJ LeMahieu, Alex Bregman, Chris Morel, Nolan Arenado, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, and Ella De La Cruz at this position. Also Gunnar Henderson, Owen Miller, and Wilmer Flores, who are available at other positions as well. Then we're going to look at our shortstops here, and we're going to start with Corey Seager for Texas. Now, he draws some really good metrics here. He has hit the ball extremely well this season. He's not got as much home run upside as some other options, and he is expensive, which would help him pay off for that. But he is capable of scoring big without the home runs, and he is drawing a really good matchup metrics on this particular slate. We'll also look at Ademez for Milwaukee, and I almost made him a core play. The really only reason I didn't is because the batting average has been inconsistent this season, but he definitely has hit the ball really well recently, as he's averaging over 11 fantasy points a game for the last 10. He's had 3 14-plus fantasy point games in the last 5. He's also had 4 home runs in that stretch. He's got really good upside, and he's a little bit underpriced here. And then Volpe for the Yankees is in play for the Yankees. His batting average has also been pretty low, but it's improved recently. He's a good contrarian play off Ademez if you want to go cheap, and he's hitting the ball well and has a solid matchup here in Colorado with some limited home run upside. You could also consider Wander Franco, Nico Horner, Ella De La Cruz, and Gunnar Henderson here. Maybe in the outfielders, we have 5 top-tier options who are fairly expensive, who all have absolutely massive home run upside, and I will get into those guys here. But Acuna is the top overall one, and he draws as a core play today in a great matchup, and he is just absolutely torching the ball. I don't know that there's too many guys that are hitting better than him this season. Then we'll look at Stanton for the Yankees. He is a boomer bust home run champ. on this position. He could have massive scoring game, but he does need home runs to probably pay off here. But he is capable of that in this matchup. Christian Yelich is also in play. His price has actually come down a little bit, which is nice. He's got nice upside and home run potential, but he hasn't really had the home runs this year that we expected. Yoshida for Boston is also in play as he's hitting the ball really well. He's managed to score fantasy points in lots of different ways. I do like his potential here. And then Springer for Toronto, also a great option today, as he has really good potential, but high risk, high reward, as this matchup isn't perfect. Maybe in the value plays here, we'll look at Hader for, for, what? Harrison. Sorry, Bader. Why I said Hader. Bader for the Yankees. He's really hit the ball pretty decently recently. He has good potential here as he's got hits in 4 of the last 5 games. He's also got 9 fantasy points per game over the last 10. That's really good potential for him in this plus matchup. Then we'll look at Duran for the Red Sox. Now, he is in a pretty good matchup here, and he's hitting the ball extremely well lately. He's been mashing the ball for 14 fantasy points per game over the last 10. Even without home runs, he's getting doubles and triples as well, which give him make him a core play on the slate with really good potential. Suzuki for the Cubs, it seems like a pretty high risk option today, but he is underpriced, and he's been somewhat slumpy, but he did finish the break right before the break with some solid games. And the last 6, he had 6 straight games with hits. He's cheap, and he has nice upside as a result. I also like Verdugo for Boston, as he draws some really good metrics for this game. He also has hit the ball pretty solidly this season, and I do like his upside in this one with home run potential. Luke Raley could also play out here in the outfield as well as first base. Then we'll look at Colton Cowser from Baltimore, who is just super cheap. Now, he hasn't hit the ball that great, but he has good potential. He's got good upside, and he's still dirt cheap, and he's still got a good matchup here. He's also managed to score fantasy points in all the games he's played, though he didn't start all those games. He does have some potential here if he draws a start. You could also consider Austin Slater, Toscar Hernandez, Mickey Manayak, Isaac Kiner Falafel, Stephen Kwan, Taylor Ward, Chris Bryant, Jack Sawinski, and Jesse Winker at this position. So overall, I think the slate's going to be fairly interesting. I think there's going to be pretty high scoring. Obviously, with lots of games, that's definitely the case. So be careful with your pitchers, but you have some really good options across the board. So thank you again for liking, commenting, subscribing, and have a nice day, guys.